Okay, I think we are now live. All right, so coding deep dive for September 18th. I was just saying before we started the stream that my only topic was adding the ability to move fields. Any other deep divey kind of topics anyone wanted to add to the agenda?
Don't think today for me.
Not necessarily needs to be a total topic, but just to clarify the fix that you made with the placeholder thing. Because
Okay.
I did not understand with the GitHub commit and chats.
Yeah, the message was just a little weird. Sorry. I had a plan. I was like, why is this showing up as green still? Oh, maybe it's because the browser doesn't recognize the transparency. But then that was what I put in my commit because I was balancing it with trying to pay attention to the meeting too. But what I actually did was just delete everything. And there was actually a green. I don't know why that is. I think I just Googled and I found a like one of those bugs that people sometimes use as tracking images.
Yeah.
And I just expected it to be transparent rather than to have any color. I'm not really sure why.
If we want, we can add more CSS that might help it be more transparent.
I don't think so. It's not a.
You can also make it a PNG
really
that has transparency.
That's what we did, and that's what I think we were trying to do in the first place. Because the issue is, we make it 1 pixel, and then it's DocAssemble has extra. Like I'm pretty sure it's inline DocAssemble because it's the styles on that particular thing. Blow it up to like 3 EM, like the whole height of the header. So we just need to make it small, or sorry, we just need to make it actually transparent to fix that.
Yeah.
So that was the version that was on the impounded feature branch. So that we were just looking at. So that's still green, obviously. Although very hard to see until you zoom all the way in on this tiny 1 pixel image.
I know, I was literally trying to see if I could hack through like hex editors and stuff to make sure it was actually transparent, because looking at things in their 1 pixel is very difficult.
Yes.
That does look like it's at least
where did it go? You can see it. You see it?
I saw it. I saw it for half a second until you did scroll past it. I don't know how to see it.
It should be in the
I
middle.
think there's, in most editing things, there's a zoom to fit on page.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know if that's going to be faster than just do it this way though. But
Yeah, that looks like it's fully transparent.
You can
Fully
also
transparent.
delete the color. You can just erase it, and then you have nothing.
I think it's what you did, and I think
That's
we're just
exactly what I did.
confirming. We're just
Oh, okay.
confirming that it worked. And the
I
only
just
way
trying
we
to
can
show
do
Bryce
that
what I
is-
did because the commit message didn't correctly describe what I did.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. That was what I did too. So
And so you got further than me. You confirmed like it wasn't actually 100% transparency in the other image. It was like 99% or something like that.
yeah.
That was the problem.
Because it was like everything I opened it in was green. It wasn't like a browser issue. It was actually the PNG is
it
green.
actually was green. I don't understand how that. Well,
I guess that's just a. Yeah, we probably shouldn't have trusted it from who we got randomly on the internet. So
no, but I thought we had gone further than that, but obviously we didn't because it clearly reproduced it. Well, hey,
Yeah,
we got people to notice the problem.
Yeah.
Not in a great way, but in a way. All right. So that one's closed. Looking over previous weeks for things that we hadn't checked off. Thank you for suggesting this method, Michelle. I think it's worked pretty well over the last year. The monitoring stuff, something we didn't really quite close. We had a plan for it. It was, and actually I have a server running to host the monitoring tools we had identified. And I did not get it up and actually running yet.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had gotten those up.
I just have a server, like it doesn't have stuff on it. So
Mhm.
it's not actually doing anything yet. We did end up getting the internal documentation for Kudu, which is good. This got done. We talked that through. I'm not sure we didn't check it off.
Because we talked through it the next week, or yeah, it was checked off the next week. Same with the digital signing, I think.
Oh, okay. I see. Good point. And I don't think anything from previously in the summer is something that's urgent to discuss here.
Yeah.
We did have this e-filing coupling. You've done a lot of refactoring there.
I was not able to make it in. Well, as in, no, there
like
were multiple.
how much is it
coupling parts.
expecting hard-coded stuff that's assembly line specific, basically, for how we lay out variables. That was, I think.
Well, was it how we're coupled? Was it how assembly line is coupled to e-filing, or was it how e-filing is coupled to assembly line? I think it's not a super big deal about how e-filing is coupled to assembly line, because no one else has been really jumping at the hook to integrate with e-filing. People have been like, oh, we'd be interested, but no one's actually like started this themselves or really reached out. So like at some point we can and we can make that, but I don't think it's like overly coupled. It's still, we need to still take JSON. It might be kind of nested. I don't think it's strangely nested though, because DocAssemble isn't strangely nested for like what's associated where.
Pretty logical, like you're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah. On the other side, the assembly line, or not the assembly line stuff, but the EFSP stuff is still fairly coupled to like how the DocAssemble EFSP code is coupled to what the like ECF specific ECF version is. I wasn't able to get those changes in because they were much bigger than just it's adding like tons of different Java specific objects for things that are not well documented on Tyler's side, and a lot of extra work that I just wasn't able to get in. But it still works fine. It works with both ECF4 and ECF5. It's just if we add another court
So this is in the return value. This is what you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
From various API calls.
It's still like that weird XML stuff, which we will essentially still need to support. Even if we do add that, we will still need to support the older stuff for probably a little bit until at least everything rolls out, like a short deprecated window before actually taking it out. So they will still, but that'll just be a while before we can get to that, if I can. So, yeah.
Okay. Anything where like anything you want to talk through there? I think just let me before we get there, I will just say, like, I think it wasn't really about whether it's tied to assembly line in general. It was just like how much is it tied to specific assumptions about the assembly line, because there were some things we changed where I felt like that maybe was a little bit too rigid an expectation of what would be in the answer contents, the session contents. And then when we changed that aspect of it, the e-filing broke, which was kind of unexpected for me.
I don't remember what this was, or like what specifically you're talking about.
That's fair. That's kind of a big thing to say.
But
do you think, well, with that vague concern, which maybe wasn't accurate, I don't know.
I'm not
Are there
super
things
sure.
We should kind of put into planning for refactoring, even if they're not there now?
I don't necessarily think so. There's like extra hacks that we have to do on the DocAssemble side anyway that make things sort of annoying. Which is like the most recent one was last week. There's like specifically Tyler has different like different codes. This is like all of the Massachusetts stuff that like is not documented. I asked Tyler about it. They were like, we don't know. And I had to figure this out myself by like going through their stuff and looking at like the network requests and stuff that were going on their page. And then I figured out the right codes. And it's still not documented. I told them like, hey, this is how I did it. And they were like, okay, and closed the issue. So but I'll have to say those values are different on production versus server versus stage. And we have to right now it's like that might be a refactor thing for the future, is to somehow at least move that. It's hard coded and there's not going to be a way to really get it unhard coded, but right now it's hard coded in MA ports, and it might make more sense to put it into EFSP or put it on the proxy server itself and just hard code it there instead. That's like an extremely specific and niche thing, but I don't think there are general, besides for that one, I don't think there are like general, like what can we refactor on assembly line to make things better. I think it's, or what can we refactor on the proxy server side to make things better. I think it's more of a lot of documentation there, which I'm actively doing, and maybe some refactors on the doc assemble side to make things cleaner, easier to use, etc. But it's also not clear how much people want to use the doc assemble side. So that's up in the air, and I don't know what the long-term plan would be. Will be for that. I don't think it's like a thing that I can really choose. But yeah.
And this is what you were saying before about Matt wanting to maybe decouple the e-filing part from the interview, so that like if changes to the interview happened, there wasn't any concern. There was like a clear API between the e-filing part essentially and the interview part.
Which kind of works. I feel like doc assemble is still always brittle and will have issues, but I don't know. It's what I don't even know if it's doable as is without sort of just becoming what Tyler is now, and like why in that case the only thing we get is, oh, you don't have to download a PDF and re-upload it, which I guess maybe I'm underestimating how much of a blocker that can be for some folks, but I do think that's not like the most difficult part of e-filing. The more conceptually difficult part is like, what filing am I making? What optional services do I have to use? Like, what are any of these codes need to be? And that's the stuff that we will then just immediately throw people to the form and be like, well, here it is. There's like a lot of writing. There's even now when we try to do some stuff for them, we can't do all of it. We like can give contextual help and information in the page that we won't be able to because we won't know what interview they're coming from. And if we do start adding all of that, it's just a much more complicated way of having contextual information.
Yeah, and then you end up maybe having to repeat questions.
Yeah, you for sure have to start repeating questions. There's no way around that, I think.
Well, I imagine like we would start out by thinking, okay, we're going to send all these things over, but I just inevitably, I imagine you're going to have things you didn't think of in advance. If you were only designing e-filing for one interview, right? Like let's say it was only going to be for Illinois, and it was only going to be for maybe even just the appearance, then there's no duplication of questions. But once you're like, oh, it's going to work for appearance and fee waiver, and you're like, okay, what are things I could have asked in the interview and sent over as a parameter? What are things I didn't think of to do that? So now they come up as questions in the interview, and then like you have to decide like how customizable, how expansive you want the API to be, and how customizable you want the interim interview. That's just like really we're saying it's like another layer between the EFSP, the proxy server, and the FM, but it's like it's a more abstract layer than actually a specific integration for that one interview. So it's like how abstract and how customizable and how capable is it going to be?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just because people are going to want to change the branding for sure. So is it just a branded version of the Tyler portal so that you don't doesn't seem as jarring when you shift servers?
Yeah, and like that's, we could do that. I'm just, I sort of question what the practicality of that is.
Has that come up a lot recently, or is Illinois still interested in adding e-filing to interviews with our current approach?
Well, I mean, it hasn't come up a lot recently because I've sort of specifically, like, we've talked about it a bit. We've talked about it a lot. We haven't talked about it recently more than sort of what we've just discussed now because I have limited time. And so I'm trying to push on the stuff that we like are currently doing in the appearance. And I know Matt is the same way. And so he hasn't started thinking about how to add e-filing to other things. And I also had some of these similar conversations with Aaron. Aaron was more interested in the decoupled approach as well. And I was like, sort of like, cool, that's great. I am not going to be able to do anything for that now, right now. So,
Okay.
On a tangential note, we should make a Stack Overflow topic for Tyler forms and start making this work visible. Maybe then they
So we might be have NDAs for some of the content. I'm not sure.
I
If we
would-
get each of those in the public.
this was a thing that I think Michelle and I were talking about. I don't know if I have access to the NDAs. I want to see because it would help doing some of these documentations. I can add everything we have to Hoodoo and like put all those links there, but
Mhm.
it would be very nice and much more open source if I could just like upload some of their documentation, not like every single bit, but like some of the documentation to more public places. But that's a separate thing, and I would want to double check because it's one of those I don't want to like if we think without asking Tyler if we think it would step on Tyler's toes, then yeah, we should continue not to. But if it's just like, oh, we can't give people access or like we can't do XYZ, then but it doesn't say anything about like you can't talk about like documentation or anything like that publicly, then I think we should be able to publish documentation. It definitely limits how anyone can understand this system without me just sort of rewriting all of their documentation.
Okay.
Is the main point there.
well, better version of the documents actually documenting some of this stuff. But yeah.
I guess the thought here is prove Tyler documentation that answers the missing. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Maybe I should bring that up in Management Monday. But I don't really know whose plate that's on. It's just like you're over there struggling in like this black hole. It seems incredibly painful.
Sorry, Michelle, I couldn't quite hear what you said.
I'm sympathizing with Bryce and just was I was trying to think who this would be best to bring up with. Maybe it's best on a Management Monday, or maybe that's none of us.
I do think, yeah, if I remember to do it next Management Monday, I don't know if it's a management-y thing or if it's like a Suffolk internal thing. I think we need to figure out. I need to figure out what Suffolk's plan is continuing. Because
Is this the basic idea that you're is that a good summary of what you're saying? It's like you want to have better documentation for how to do stuff.
Well, I want to. I have like lots of notes that I have taken, lots of like miscellaneous. Sometimes I'll just write things in Git commits because that they are not like that's sort of the random things that I have. But if someone essentially like if I gave someone the public GitHub repo and like all the documentation I've written and even the stuff that like the private stuff, more private stuff, and I like polished it up and published it, it's still not enough to like even start using e-filing stuff. Like you need to know a lot more about ECF and how Tyler is using ECF. And the best way to do that would be to just publish the Tyler documentation that I like use daily when I'm doing e-filing stuff. And it's a matter of if we can do that. If we like, I can 100% can upload everything to Hoodoo. They still update their own stuff. And so I'd be like, here's a version from late 2013 or 2023. And then like, here's like the links to everything where they will continue to update stuff if you have access and can access it.
Okay.
But none of this is open. That's the thing. It's not like we could like, and it works to pass on to whoever else at Suffolk decides to start doing e-filing stuff next, like you and David as well. But it's not enough for other people to start doing e-filing stuff.
When you say other people, are you thinking of like another Suffolk employee or like a member of the general public?
General public, like I'm assuming all Suffolk employers are going to have access to Hoodoo. I'm just thinking like it's going to be hard to get partners, other courts interested, and like less other courts, because we still do. It's like we're not going to get Cali interested in like doing this e-filing stuff. We aren't going to get other people who are like doing things with other e-filing DocAssemble things and are interested in using this. Like if anyone who wants to talk to Tyler and is like, oh wow, this is a cool library, like we need more and better documentation. And the options are for me to rewrite the bulk of what Tyler has done, which sort of seems like a loophole sort of thing, or we just publish the EFSP guide that they provide with the clarification that like this might be slightly out of date because they change it whenever.
I think the crux of it is like troubleshooting and collaboration and that kind of thing.
I don't think we're going to solve this problem, to be honest, Bryce. I think it's pretty typical for proprietary systems to have like proprietary documentation.
Bryce didn't bring it up.
Probably
don't
just
blame
has
it
to
on
go.
him.
Well, sure.
It's not a blaming thing. I just want to see if I can.
No, yeah, that's fair.
And then maybe there's a response that maybe I'm missing part of it. But if it's that they have stuff that is adequately documented by their documentation, but we want to share it with more folks so they could also play in the same space, they probably just have to sign the thing with Tyler. And if that's the solution, and if we can't just do it for them and we don't want to and we're not getting paid to do it for them, then maybe Tyler is still willing to allow them to view it and sign something without having to go through all the hoops to do a full certification, but they can still view it to see and let us in. Or maybe we can get permission to share some of the materials. But yeah, rewriting it just so we have an open collaboration space, I don't think makes sense. That's
I think it's
also will be out of date quickly. And
yeah.
I think it's also
I was thinking this was to fill gaps in documentation. That's a bit different, but sorry, Michelle.
I think it's about closing gaps in documentation collaboratively as a community.
Well, the thing is, there's no community.
There's not a community.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're right. Sorry. And that's my main point is we aren't going to get anyone doing anything if we can't if we can't publish these things and make it at least easy. Like the rest of our entire site is like, oh, here's freely available. Here's all this stuff you could get started. If you want to join us, you can. And people have joined us that way. I don't think we're going to get people seriously interested in looking into e-filing until they're already around. And even then, the bulk of the implementation will be on Suffolk unless we document a whole lot of the stuff that Tyler can do. And through our own stuff, which is
Are you
essentially
saying
rewriting
that
their
you think,
documentation.
are you saying that you think it won't work anyway in general, getting people on board this train? Or are you saying that the open documentation and open collaboration would help get people on board?
I'm thinking / hoping it would help. It might not be enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not enough anyway, but this is
It needs to be someone who is in a similar position to us, where they're like an integrator or they're a consortium. Maybe the folks in California that were trying to build some open standards around EFMs,
Yeah,
they might be interested at that level. I think that's kind of it, though. I don't see it as someone who wants to be able to use our system to e-file as wanting to contribute in that way to the tool.
I guess so. I guess we'll.
We're not really getting folks to contribute even to the assembly line stuff that is totally open in the open, right? They just ask us for stuff, which makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair and valid. That's fair. Just a closing thought, really.
Yeah, I do wish it was easier, but it's kind of, I think it's probably typical anytime you're working with a proprietary platform to have this kind of need.
I thought it was
Not
open.
be able to solve it.
I thought it was
ECF
technically
isn't
open source.
But it's
None
not
of their
good.
stuff's open source. It's run on ZCF, which is a spec that's open.
I see.
ECF does not even include half the stuff you have to do with Tyler, though. So it's not complete at all. Just even if you know ECF, you would not be able to like integrate with Tyler. Even if they had open access or something, there'd be a lot more that would need to be documented.
It would be really interesting if we could see another ECF implementation and understand what really differs between them.
Mhm.
But it is clear that like a lot of the things Tyler does aren't in the spec. The question is like, is it similar to what other things
Yeah, I think I have a rough idea of that sort of stuff now because the Tyler stuff stayed the same from ECF 4 to 5. So the
that
stuff
answers it, I guess.
yeah, that answers it a little bit, but it's still unclear like how much is not standard on their side, sort of thing.
So here, this is maybe off topic, but
we can change topics. I don't think there's a lot more to delve into here, honestly.
oh no, it's fine. I'm just I want to just make sure we're like we're covering some things that are
Yes,
relevant
yeah.
and blocking you at different times too, right? That's all.
Yeah.
You said that the ECF 5 implementation for Tyler is really similar to the ECF 4 implementation, or maybe I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, but it wasn't one of the design goals of ECF 5 to solve the things that were custom about in implementations like Tyler's. So do they not use the features that they could have used to solve their problems, and they just kept things the old way because they still could?
Not quite. Sorry, I'm writing a quick note. It's a bit I'll do later. So not quite. It's more of there's a whole lot of individual like RPC, like remote procedure call stuff, essentially, that we can make to Tyler's server. And most of them, or yeah, so like there's like a whole bunch of different calls we could make. It was unclear if everyone before when I was doing stuff with just ECF work, it was unclear if everything is just ECF or was just like, oh, this is how ECF4 is always implemented, or this is some extra Tyler stuff. But moving from ECF4 to 5, the stuff that changed from 4 to 5 is just the ECS stuff, and everything else that includes a lot of like get user functionality, like firms and setting up service contacts and lawyers and everything. That's all Tyler specific stuff because none of those APIs changed at all from ECF 4 to 5. And so because of that, we now have a difference. On the proxy server side stuff, there's now a clear boundary between here's the Tyler stuff. It's pretty much always the same. All of the specific codes we end up downloading are honestly very Tyler specific. And ECF just says like you need to provide a way for people to understand what values to put where in your specific ECF calls through the codes, but the Tyler codes all stay the same. I'm meandering a bit, but all I have to say is there's now like, these are parts that are Tyler specific. We keep it the same over ECF 4 or 5, and these parts are ECF specific. They changed obviously from ECF 4 to 5. And there's, yeah, I've tried to push most of it into here's all the Tyler stuff. Here's a package for all the Tyler specific stuff. Here's a package for all the ECF 4 specific stuff, and here's a package for all the ECF 5 specific stuff. Package just being Java specific for like folder.
Great. Okay. Well, that's really
It's kind of
helpful.
Yeah, and that was a lot of like what the past was hard about trying to do that stuff. But now it's, yeah, that was the part that took so long, was trying to separate out the Tyler stuff from the ECF 4 and 5 stuff. Yeah, I don't know what else I'm going for there, but
yeah. Yeah,
All right.
that's
Well,
a
that's-
good one. Yeah.
Good. That's very helpful to have thought through that. And I know we're in kind of your closing weeks here for some of this stuff. So if there's anything else you want to talk through and think through, we can help document it better, or
for sure, yeah.
that's really where we are now, right? Just writing stuff down.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, I guess, which probably should have been a work manager question, of if it makes more sense to. I feel like I ask this question often.
Document versus do.
Yeah, document versus do. VCF 5 stuff, I was like, oh, this should be able to be merged. It's split in a way that it should be, and then I was like, oh, there are a few things that weren't quite ready to merge. I've merged a lot of the changes, but like a lot of them are still in a separate branch. And I'm wondering if it's like, I don't want to spend like a whole extra week trying to merge all of that and have it ready and like good to go, or if I should just start, like, ignore that for now, start documenting as much as I can, still work on the Massachusetts stuff, the appeals court stuff as much as I can, and then sort of knowing that I have a little bit of sort of trinkling bit of time over the next month, if it makes more sense to wrap that stuff up then, this might just be a more lab specific question of like, I don't know what I will be doing then, or what the lab wants to sort of start doing then, and so I don't quite know what I should be doing now.
Yeah, I guess what we need to figure out is like who will be picking up some of that stuff, and then
Yeah.
have that, if to the extent, like if that's me, that means I should jump into it, and then
Yeah.
probably it should be more like a knowledge transfer
That's fair. Okay,
way of
I can-
thinking of it, probably.
that's fair, and I have been trying to make it, at least structure it so it's easier to do a knowledge transfer so far. So
Okay.
I'll just keep in mind it's knowledge transfer or whatever I just had to focus on. So okay.
Okay. And then, yeah, we really have a short list this week, I think, but my only specific task I was trying to work on was letting people rearrange fields from one screen to another. And in my head, it's like, oh, we should do this with like drag and drop. How do I get a drag and drop widget working properly in DocAssemble? What kind of screen do we display it on? How do we store the state? And so this feature has just kind of languished, but I was thinking about it more, and I think maybe I don't have a good way to mock this up or demonstrate it, but my thought is on the review screen that you get to when you've assigned every field to a screen and you're done with the interview, right? We have this kind of little wireframey kind of representation of the whole interview, screen by screen. My thought is there, you click the button to edit a screen, you see the fields, you maybe click another button to say, I want to move a field, and then it shows the fields and a drop down that says what screen you want that particular field to belong to. So that's how I'm thinking of implementing it. I think that's a way to do it that should be just be able to use DocAssemble's built-in features and not involve any custom UI, which I think is helpful.
That feels right. And at least, yeah, is the best way. I don't know if it's the best sort of UX easy way, but
Yeah.
And it's like we have, I don't know how well the drag and drop that Lily implemented a while back works. And I think it works still. It was not super, I think it doesn't have like it's not super accessible. I think we needed a few other things to do that, but it still works. But I don't know. I think the issue there is just like how do you show everything on the same screen and then let you drag and drop between all of them.
Yeah,
My sense is not to roll our own.
We have roller on. Did we take that out?
Yeah, well, like, I suggest not continuing down that path. Like, I'm
Okay.
just saying, like,
Sure, yeah, that's right.
that doing our own is not,
are you talking about the current rearranging fields approach, that screen? When you say roll your own?
I
or
assume
a
that's
new
what
feature?
I thought that's what we were talking about, but if not, I mean, that is, I suggest not rolling our own stuff in general. How about that? Unless it's absolutely necessary, because there's drag and drop stuff out there.
Yeah, they don't all necessarily like work as a drop-in feature with DocAssemble though. They make a lot of assumptions generally. They expect you to be able to have more flexibility of the way that you model the code. So if we wanted a drag and drop library, I don't think we could totally just use something off the shelf. Not that you ever can, but it would require some forking or something. And the other something that I've noticed is when we pull in features that someone else built that have their own maintenance schedule and do most but not 100% of what we want, sometimes it seems simpler in some cases just to have used, if we had taken an approach of using vanilla JavaScript and HTML and CSS, because then it's just our feature that we know the scope of and will only change when we change it. But
It's just
yeah,
then using something as a model. I'm just saying not from scratch, because there's problems that people have already thought through that we don't even know exist.
no, that's definitely true. Yeah, here I'm saying I think where I'm landing for this feature is that we're not going to try to do a drag and drop feature for a lot of the reasons that Bryce said. Like, it's not clear how, let's say your interview has 10 screens, like what's the interface to show moving a field from one interview to another? It's not simple. I think the best we could do is, I guess there's two options. One is the drop-down menu. It has a way for you to assign a field to a new screen. So the drop-down menu would list all the screens. But you would need some hook in your mind for what is that screen again that you're talking about that you're asking me to move it to. The other option is just like maybe a delete field button, which deletes it from one screen. But then how do you, then you need some way, an easy way to let people add screens, add the field to a new screen. That is not going to be the same metaphor we use right now, because right now our metaphor is field assignment. It's not adding fields.
Well, I mean, you could cycle back through the screens again, right? Like you could cycle back through like, this is screen 1, screen 2, like, and they could assign it on the screen page. Like they could just do that over again.
Do you like that
A possibility.
as a user experience?
It's at least clear. It's nothing
I
else.
really hate
Feels
it, to be
more
honest.
important.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I was just curious if we're just
I don't love it
offering as a
either.
possibility or as like a suggestion that you think would be a good one first as an alternative to the other option.
I mean, I think it's like plan Z if we don't come up with anything else and we still want this feature.
We can call these A and B. So is it better than A and B? That's what I'm wondering. Because I might be missing something about it, but at first blush, that doesn't sound very friendly to the user to say, okay, you deleted a field, now go through 11 screens and figure out which screen you want to add it to. And presumably, like, you just keep doing that till you're done. Like, if you move 3 fields, do you do that 3 times?
you could have a page with all the deleted screens and then the titles of the other pages that you could like have a drop down for each field for which screen it will show up on based on the title or something. A possibility.
Yeah, it's kind of what that's kind of what I was thinking here with this option with the deleting the field. That's a good, but you're right, it needs to be fleshed out more. So it would
I'm
be
just
like,
saying to add a field to the screens after
Mm.
you've deleted it from other. Right.
I was thinking like something like this. Okay, so you go through each screen you want to delete a field from. You delete the field. Somewhere there's a display of the fields that don't have a screen assigned to them. But you don't necessarily have to interact with that. Maybe it's like a warning that pops up at the end. It's like, hey, you haven't assigned these fields to a screen. So then you click on the screen you want to add the field to, and there's an option that says add new fields. And you can add a field that was available from that list of unassigned fields. So I'm thinking like the user makes a more deliberate choice to click on the screen they want to add something to.
Okay.
The challenge there that I was trying to articulate is you don't, this is a different way of adding fields to screens than we have used before. That's the main issue. I guess we could still show the same pick list with like, oh, edit this screen, have it show the fields that aren't assigned. I guess it could be using the same method.
Sorry, I'm back. Did you hear what I said?
Nope.
I just said that it's sounding a bit confusing to me, but like the flow in general is sounding a bit confusing to me, but maybe that's because I'm not understanding what you're describing. So it may take some.
For me, this is still option B. I think option A is very fast to implement and might even end up being more clear than this other approach. Do you want me to try like quickly? pulling up
Neither of
screens
those
with more
described neither of those described the flow that I suggested, which is to assign a screen to a field, not to assign a field to a screen.
I don't think I heard you describe that. Tell us more.
Okay, so each deleted field would have a drop down of all the screens that there are, and you would choose the name of the screen to which that field should be assigned.
Okay. I think that's option A that I have here.
That's not what I understand from that. That would be a screen, and you could, from the drop down, the
The
particular
screens
field.
are all on every field is on a screen. So the question is not just assigning the field to a screen, but there has to be some option of unassigning the field from a screen first. So my thought is,
Yeah, you would delete it first from the screens that you wanted to delete it, and then there would be a page with the screens that had been deleted. I mean, with the fields that had been deleted, a list of them. Each one would have a drop down to assign them to a specific screen.
I'm just thinking do that at the same time instead of having it delete and then later reassign. Option A is I think the same,
But that would take it.
but it happens on the screen where you delete it. Instead of deleting it, you just say, you ask what screen should this go on? And at that point, you assign it to the screen, one of the existing screens.
Okay. I mean, if you have a UI we just discussed about not creating custom UI, so I'm not sure if you see a doc assemble way of doing that, or if you're suggesting we do build a custom UI.
Would just be a select box.
But you have to update, like, you have to update the screen when you make a change.
No.
Okay,
Okay, let me show you. Maybe it's too confusing to do without any visuals at all. This doesn't actually do anything yet. So, but the point is here we're in auto drafting mode. This is where this would normally come up.
mhm,
Let's say I wanted to edit this screen here, hospital facts,
mhm.
and I wanted to move the from facts to the student attorney page. I don't know why.
Mhm.
But that's what I wanted to do. Here, I'm just envisioning one more little drop-down menu. And maybe it's just behind an option because maybe you don't want to combine the drag and drop to rearrange with the reassign field to a new screen choice. But there'd be a drop down here. It would be like the list would be
Then the screens.
the list of screens. Yeah. Right. So that you would just choose this field goes on this screen. You're saying the same thing, but don't do it until you've deleted all the fields from every screen you want to delete fields from.
I thought it was a.
Right.
I did not understand how the. Like I had a just totally different vision of how the screens were being. And their fields were being shown. Going to each individual. Screen by itself wasn't what I was envisioning, so. I just thought this would all be on one page. for
Oh,
all the
okay.
screens and all the fields.
Okay, that makes more sense why you were saying require a new feature, because you were thinking all the screens on the page would be refreshed to show what screens they were assigned to.
Yeah,
Go to annotation mode. I don't, to me, like this is too clunky, right? Like you have to drag and scroll. Even this very short 7 or 8 field form involves a lot of scrolling to see all the screens. So I think like,
I would want to see all the screens and fields on one page, which would just take scrolling. I mean,
so then you
regardless of how.
click and drag and then you hit the right target to put the screen on, the field on.
That would be rough, because you'd have to,
I can't even get this to
Scroll
scroll back up until I go all the way over here to the scroll bar.
yeah. So
Obviously, it's valuable to see all the screens. You need to see it at the same time that you're editing the fields.
I would, but that's me.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's an interesting. I just don't see how to do that in a way that's scoped reasonably. That's all. I'm not saying like it's not a good UX. I do wonder if that is a good UX though, just because of the nature of how much scrolling is involved.
Yeah.
And the risk of doing a wrong target.
I mean, if anything, I'd want like a drop down that I'd put in the new screen name for the field instead of this like text or whatever. It'd be a drop down. And
Like here.
and then it would appear in the screen that I, gave it the drop down for, that I assigned it to. But that I don't think is possible in DocAssemble. So,
You would need some custom user interface there for sure. Or some, yeah, I think you might be able to use like the inline fields option to like have a drop down appear there.
you might be
But-
able to have check-in or something.
But then
Get on the
how do
same-
you make that a discoverable feature within the context of like these little boxes?
Well, it would be a drop down. I mean,
What Chrome around there indicates that is what the feature, the dropdown is for.
It would say, edit page or something like that.
It's a lot of butter, I think.
Or I don't have the whole design. Maybe what we need is a UI designer.
Well,
Maybe it's wrong. Yep. It might not be ideal. I don't find this ideal either. So I don't think
Yeah.
we've landed on anything that's ideal.
I don't think we could get anything better unless we move off Dockers, unless we move the Weaver off of DocAssemble. Like,
which is worth considering for a long-term vision. I mean, there's a lot of stuff it does that is tightly coupled to DocAssemble though, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly not though.
just Python is it's tightly coupled with the auto draft. What is there specific things?
We're
that
using
we focus on?
Mako for the template, the output template, but
Okay,
we could just use Mako. We could use the Mako library directly. At one point we were, but I switched to using DocAssemble's template feature.
Yeah.
It could do what we needed, and it was like, okay, let's instead of maintaining this our own. And then I immediately questioned that idea, that choice. Whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I mean,
I'd rather see the page that you showed that was a separate page. I'd rather just see a long list of those rather than the way, yeah. Like I'd rather see them one after the other, just vertically on the screen.
so you don't like the fact that you can see 3 at a time on one row?
No, that doesn't help me as much as the other screen helps. Like this doesn't feel as helpful. Yeah, this feels much more helpful information. I don't want to have to go back and forth between the screens to see them.
So you're imagining you're just gonna scroll through every screen
Yep,
to see it?
I'm gonna have to go through them anyway, and and that also shows me the order a little bit more clearly.
You don't think you get the order from just reading left to right?
I mean, I can try and like psychoanalyze the reasons that I would find that more comfortable, but I don't know that that's going to help us come to a conclusion.
Well, I'm not sure if, so we're really talking about like trying to get a small feature in as an MVP. It's helpful to think through like other improvements to the UX, but I'm not sure if I'm finding this so helpful so far.
Okay. I didn't realize we were going for an MVP with minimal changes to the current UI.
I would just say like an implementable version of it. So like the idea of like the scrollable drag and drop, that was the first thing you suggested.
No,
Um,
I didn't.
maybe it's just
I
not
don't want drag and drop. I don't like drag and drop in general. That is,
we need at least a backup option of a drop down, don't we, for accessibility? It's the more accessible.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm not sure if we learned anything from this discussion so far, but I think I'm going to go ahead and try to implement a first version of it as I zeroed in on it. I don't see another quick thing we could do.
You can delete fields on this page. That might be faster than deleting fields on the
Ow.
individual pages.
How are we going to do that?
Have a delete button.
Yeah. That's not a feature of DocAssemble that's built in really to,
I mean, is
you're
this
going to make it an event for
hard
each
thing?
button.
Is this whole page doesn't look like a feature of DocAssemble.
This is a rendering of the current content. It's not interactive. I guess these links can do different things, but to delete and then refresh it you're saying, I don't know where that's gonna fit. Already kind of cramped for space. We were using more of the horizontal space before, but that was breaking something else, from what I remember. Yeah, I don't know if I'm not so sure, because I think you're saying like this is, you would want to go through every screen. I don't know that that's really true.
But
Um,
I
that
don't know
people-
what you mean by go through, but just.
Those are the words you
scroll
used. I'm not
past.
sure what you mean, what you meant by it either.
Well, you do need to go through the screens if you know, like, in order to move a field from one screen to another, you're gonna have to land on this, you're gonna have to not do it on the previous screens. Land on this page, and then browse through all of the fields that are on each screen. Here, and like recognize, oh, I want to move this field. So it's a matter of how much we think someone's going to want to look in detail on something like this, or look in detail at, or like, or sort of force more detail by using using more vertical space, but by having fewer, like not fewer, but like having more details of each thing take up more horizontal space, you know.
I think I'm understanding.
Yeah, I guess just a question of like the level of detail. So this currently, we went through a couple iterations of this. This is what we landed on to let people see, understand the flow of the whole interview. So some of these screens are representing things that the user didn't ever have a chance to interact with, right? Like the intro screen, the signature screen, the preview page. Those are things we just generate for them. That's several of these screens that they're shown. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you have a whole different user interface for reviewing the interview, sounds like you're saying you don't like the current way we're reviewing the things we do review. I'm trying to add one feature, which is to let you move a field. But I think I would need to understand more about like what the whole vision is and how what things it implements that we have here.
I mean, I think it'd be like I don't know if I have a lot of suggestions for. I might need to think about it more of like how to implement with the current interface, but I think I don't have like a lot of comfortable suggestions for that. I think the interface I was suggesting might have more comfortable ways to do that, but if that's not an option, then I think maybe it takes more thought, or maybe someone with a UX background would have better ideas. Or
I'm a little skeptical about like whether turning to experts is the way to solve it. I mean, sometimes we can't generate ideas internally, but
okay, I mean, if we have
those
an
aren't
idea,
necessarily
I'm
good.
just saying, if we don't have an idea that we're satisfied with, that's an avenue. If we do have an idea that we're satisfied with, then we do that.
Okay, all right. I don't think there's anything. We can obviously we're not stuck with this layout. We just have been trying it for the last few months, but I'm not sure if this discussion is turning up anything else that is
Yeah,
actionable right now.
and yeah.
Are there any other topics that we wanted to talk about? We're gonna just try this for now. Maybe I'll write down our thoughts about not using drag and drop. Anything else anyone wants to talk about on our deep dive call?
Um, Not me, not at the moment.
I mean, I guess this is a new idea.
And I think drag and drop would also be uncomfortable because of the fact that you have to move vertically between. Like you have to just move so far vertically. I think it's not even comfortable for people without disabilities.
I heard another idea, which was I think this is kind of where I'm thinking about it, where I was like a little skeptical about some of these ideas. Maybe it's worth just thinking it through more. It's like there are a lot of different tasks you have here, right? Like we're saying review your interview. So what tasks do we want to make available through buttons? What explanation text is going to be needed to make those possible to interact with? And what value is given from these different views? Like there's the bird's eye view, there's the zoomed in view. Is it useful to distinguish between here's what your whole interview looks like versus let's go through and look at each screen again? Are people getting to this from the I'm feeling lucky button? Do we think actually we don't really want to make it a one-click option for anybody? You always have to go through all the work that has been done for you and review it? Or is there something you can get just from kind of like scanning it? And so like when we looked at one task, which is moving a field, it might make sense to think about adding more buttons in Chrome and explanation for how to achieve that task. But does that conflict with the other tasks that we're trying to do on this page? And once we just evaluate those, I think it might change our answer as to like the worth of adding that feature here versus on the follow-up page. But at least we need to understand what all the tasks are that are achievable on the page. Well, so I don't know if that helps. If you want to keep thinking about it more, Michelle, if that is helpful to you might want to play around with this page and think about how the different ways are you can get to it. So it's not just from the I'm feeling lucky button. It's also if you go through the interview linearly in a normal way. Maybe we want to hide this by default. I don't know. When we added it, people seem to really appreciate having like a visual overview, but there's obviously a trade-off. It's like it's more visually cluttered. But other than that, is there any? No one is saying anything else that they want to talk about.
Might just be a short day today.
Yeah, it might just be a short day. What was it? 15 minutes at least. I guess it's a lot shorter. Sometimes we take a lot longer.
Yeah.
So we'll check in again next week then, in that case. See y'all.
Sorry, I wasn't like on task. I think I didn't realize what we were trying to focus on. Sorry about that.
I mean, we don't really have any other chance to really talk about features, so I'm not. I mean, it's okay to bring up other ideas, especially if we have a shorter agenda. So that's okay.
Right. See y'all next time.
See ya.